Welcome back to the Becoming Her podcast. Guys, Dr. Ann and I are back for, as I always say, another fire episode. It's so funny. I text Ann right before we hopped on. I'm like, I'm running 5 minutes late. And she's like, you're fine, chill. I'm putting some makeup on. I was like, I'm just trying to not look homeless. That's what this is about today. I was like, so, and you guys know how we try to keep this podcast as real and authentic as we possibly can. And I'm like, even if I'd be curious how many of you guys, if you just want to reach out to me, actually watch the podcast though versus listening to it, right? Because I
Uh-huh.
don't ever watch podcasts. I only listen, but I know there are some people who actually watch them. And I don't have we don't have any sort of fancy setup or anything
No,
like that because
no.
it really is meant that you guys feel like you're just sitting down and having a cup of coffee with us. But it was funny because I was just like, yeah, I just am trying to roll in and just not look like, at least, like I told Anna, I was like, nobody needs to know that I haven't showered in 3 days, right? I'm going to admit that right now, but nobody needs to know that. It's totally fine.
I just went on the stair machine and I was like all sweaty and stuff. And I'm like, well, thank God nobody can smell me.
I know. I was like,
Literally.
you get all the benefits without any of the downside with us, you guys.
That's
That's how
right.
this
That's
works.
right.
It's funny though, Anne, because I was going to bring this topic to you, and this is the first time I'm bringing this up to you. I feel like we should do a whole podcast on this, but TikTok released, and I know there's a lot of drama going around on TikTok about this, new guidelines about, and they basically said within these guidelines, the more polished and presentable, basically they said the better you look, the better your content's going to perform. And
Oh, wow.
so, yeah, I know. I want to do a whole podcast talking about this and how because I have thoughts about this. I'm not going to talk about them now. I definitely have probably thoughts that, some people might disagree with in and around that whole concept. But I feel like, again, different podcast for a different day, but we should do a whole podcast structured around that because I know that you can geek out neurologically why we're wired to look for things that are much more, presentable and all of that. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting concept. I was like, I'm going to create a TikTok talking about it, but I'm like, we definitely need a podcast about this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. 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 No,
Yeah.
yeah, that just is alarming too on multiple levels, but it's fine.
Yes. Yes. I know. I know. There's so much to that. So we're gonna we're gonna continue on with our three parts series. I love saying
Oh, you
that.
did a
I
good
know,
job.
three parts part series. And we're going to be talking about last week, we talked about how you are not one person, you're a multitude of people. And today we're going to be elaborating on the three exact parts, the three parts part series with the three parts that are running your life. Anne's clapping. Because I promise, I know every single one of you are going to recognize every single part that we're about to talk about. And by the end of this podcast, our goal is going to be that you can name these parts. And when they show up for you, you're going to understand and be like, oh, that's a manager, that's a firefighter. And so we're going to really dive into these specific parts that are showing up for you guys. So, Anne, I'm going to let you kind of kick it off for us and really dive into because we have three specific parts that we're going to be talking about today.
Uh-huh. And just for the record, I want to share that that a part of this is when you sometimes feel like you're a little kid or sometimes you feel very adult-like, and we're going to dive into exactly why that is and
Mm.
what part of you is showing up when that occurs, so you get better at, as Nicole was saying, identifying it. So
Hmm.
these are the three parts that are secretly running your life from behind the scenes. And every single pattern that you cannot break is a part of you trying to protect something you haven't healed yet.
Mm.
I just want to throw that out there.
Childhood
So
trauma, you guys. Childhood trauma.
we're gonna dive in.
Unresolved.
We're gonna dive in. And and I think as a therapist, had you met me the first decade of my practice, I would have said that we didn't have to go backward so that we can move forward. In other words, like, who cares about your childhood? It's kind of over and done unless something really traumatic happened. If it was pretty decently okay and you had good parents, like, we're just going to move forward. What I've learned now with a lot more experience and more years under my belt and also my own trauma work is that we have to go back so we can move forward, because
Mhm.
until we go back and we identify what part of you got wounded and then we work to restore and fix it, you will keep staying stuck in the exact same patterns over and over and over
You'll
again.
never be able to break the loop.
Nope, nope. So, all right, first part are managers. And I'm gonna talk about managers first because managers are the part of us that we love to identify most with because they are the part of us that are actually trying to keep everything together.
Mhm.
These are parts that are trying to prevent pain before it happens. So they tend to be preventative pain and protective pain. They control your behavior, they control your image, and then they control your outcomes. The core role of a manager is to predict outcomes and avoid vulnerability. When a manager is healthy, when they're not carrying fear or shame, managers become wise planners. They become disciplined but flexible when needed, and they become incredibly value driven leaders. Healthy expressions of managers are planning things like organizing your week without a lot of rigidity or meal planning for the week. They become very achievement based. And again, these are healthy managers. They pursue goals without tying worth to success. So, this is where we tend to have more of a growth mindset when we're doing something that a healthy manager is managing that. So, if I set a goal for myself and I don't mean it, that manager is going to look at that and go, huh, what happened that didn't work?
Mhm. But that's
I
not how most operate, though. They don't operate from the healthy space, of course
Well,
not.
well, I'm going to dive into that in
Yeah,
just a moment. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she's
A
getting
healthy
giddy.
manager also has boundaries. They can say no without guilt or harshness or fear of other people's reactions to those boundaries. They tend to be self-reflective. They evaluate behavior without any degree of shame. This is that curiosity piece that I was just mentioning. And they tend to have a great deal of responsibility. And and this is follow through without perfectionism. And I want to kind of pocket this because I think what I see a lot of people misunderstand is they take responsibility, and this is an unhealed manager, they take responsibility for everything and for everyone. That is
Mm,
not a healthy manager. A healthy manager says, it's all about what I'm feeling, what I'm needing, and how and all the things that I have on my plate. I'm going to take responsibility for that.
mm,
And when we have that healthy manager operating, this feels like clarity and groundedness and intentionality to life.
yep.
So there's not a lot of chaos, there's not a lot of anxiety. It's simply showing up and what I like to refer to it often, making yourself proud.
Mm,
All right. So burden managers, I like to call them unhealed managers. They carry fear, and this is often coupled with fear of rejection, also shame, and then fear of failure. And they become incredibly controlling, not just of ourselves, but they attempt to control other people. So unhealthy expressions of unhealed managers are things like perfectionism. If it's not perfect, I'm not safe. If it's not perfect, I can't put it out on TikTok.
mhm,
They tend to be incredibly people pleasing. I must keep everyone happy around me. This is that overly responsible for everybody else and not myself. They tend to be engaged in high degrees of overthinking, constant scanning of mistakes, like for their own mistakes, as well as sources of threat. And they tend to have a very, very harsh inner critic, shaming you into improvement. And when I talk about this, I like to call it like stop shooting yourself. Should is a form of judgment. It tends to only produce shame and come from a place of shame.
mm,
And so when we're saying things like, I should have known better, I can't believe that I fell for that, I should have worked harder at this, that is the sign of an unhealed manager that's trying to help you avoid pain in the future. Unhealed managers also are engaged in emotional suppression. So they avoid feelings to maintain control. They don't want to identify anxiety, they want to intellectualize anxiety. They don't want to share that they're worried about something. They simply want to batten down the hatches and create more rules.
mm,
And when unhealthy managers are operating, this feels like pressure, high degrees of anxiety, tightness, especially here in the chest, and feeling like it's never good enough.
oof. I know that's going to
Mhm.
hit home for so many women. And we work with, I mean, this is, I think the thing too is that it's hard to spot because a lot of women specifically that we work with, they're not like falling apart in public, right? It's not like this huge meltdown where people can see. It's this private thing. It's like your calendar's dialed in, your house is clean, your team is running efficiently. Like on the outside, you have it all put together, but on the inside, you're dying. And it's these emotional meltdowns that you have in complete and total, like in a private space where nobody else can see that. Because again, you're afraid of the shame and the judgment that might come if somebody sees you having that meltdown. And it's crazy because the women that we work with that live in this space, and I was one of them, you guys. So I'm not calling this out. Believe me, I've done my work and I'm still continuing to do my work. I would never say that I'm
Always.
quote unquote healed,
Yes.
but most women in the space come to us for a better plan. And I put that in quotations. And it's like, girlfriend, you don't need a better plan. You have 14 of them in your notes app already. I know that you do, right? Like we have to understand internally what's going on that never makes the plan good enough. And that's the
Hmm.
part for, this wounded manager, or, I say toxic, but the way that you describe that sounds a little bit better. And is understanding that you can have the perfect plan, but internally, it's never going to be enough until we understand what's going on and we can work through these wounded parts.
Yes. And by the way, we can never actually grow and stick to a plan if it's only modeled and reinforced by shame. So if you set up your meal plan for the week and you fail or you eat something outside of the meal plan or you didn't do your workout and all you feel is shame about that, or you feel like you're never good enough, or you kick yourself when you're down and you just want to like cry because you're like, oh, I still can't get this right. That is not going to get you to a place of long-term life skills. That
Hmm.
will never, ever actually lead there. And when I try to rob that from people, like when I try to take that from them, people want to hang on to the
Oh,
judgment
for
of
dear life.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, but how am I going to get better if I can't work on being perfect? How am I going to get better if I don't criticize myself? And we confabulate ambition for perfectionism, and perfectionism is deeply rooted in shame and does not actually manage behavior successfully.
Yep. And the reality is social media glamorizes this too.
Yes.
Right? They glamorize the unhealed manager because if you're rooted in your accomplishments and you're worthy, if you can show up and say, I did this, 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 and this, it's not sexy to show up on social media and be like, oh, I took a day where I just completely disconnected and, didn't look at my phone, didn't execute my to-do list. That's not sexy. Nobody wants to talk about that. But it's really sexy to show up on social media and be like, look at me. I wear 18 different hats and I check off all the boxes. And that's the part that can be really, really, really challenging.
So, and I want to kind of give this, give a really firm example for a manager, a healthy manager, and an unhealed manager, just so that
Hmm.
we kind of get an image of this. So, one of the situations that I personally struggled with was posting to TikTok. I actually had a virtual assistant for months, and I never gave her anything to post outside the podcast. I would not record a video. All right. So a healthy manager says, hey, let's figure this out. Let's put something out there. We can refine it and then we can share it. And doing something is better than nothing.
Yep.
All right. And a burden manager, an unhealed manager says, if this isn't perfect, if I haven't figured everything out, then people will judge you. And so you can't post it until it's absolutely perfect and you know exactly what you were doing.
Yep. That fear of judgment and rejection is so strong. It's so deep rooted in us.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yep.
And ironically, what's interesting about that is that I think it was in the first couple of weeks that I started really gaining momentum on posting things. Someone did comment. I remember it to this day. It was like the something stallion was his name, and he posted on one of my videos. You're old, and then he posted somewhere else something else, and they were all just digs. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's what I wasn't hoping for. And I was like, well, no, I'm just going to block you. Just quit it. Yeah, it was the Italian stallion. Okay, it was a guy named Italian stallion, or
That has
something
no
with Italian.
followers and no profile picture. And yeah.
Yes, it was
Yep.
all of that, right? And so, but the an unhealthy manager again is going to think through that and say, "Oh my gosh, you've got to put filters on, you've got to get Botox, you've got to make sure that you look completely polished so that no one ever does that again." And a healthy manager says, "Hey, that didn't feel great. Also, I'm going to manage that, and if people don't want to listen to me, they don't have to."
Mm. I love that you brought up the comparison of what that actually looks like side by side, because I know it can be really hard to differentiate between the two, between what really is purposeful and, meaningful and what's going to, move you in the right direction versus what's keeping you stuck in these feelings and in these loops. So I'd love for you to talk about, Anne, what like what do you see for a woman who's been running a manager since she was a little, like an unhealthy manager since she was a little girl,
Uh-huh.
because her attachment is, or not her attachment, her worth is driven to her, accomplishments and how much she achieves and, what she sounds like, what she looks like. So talk to me about the girl that's been running that, like the little girl inside of you. And then we hit, our mid 40s and it stops working for her. Hormones start to decline. We start to play a whole, like we're entering into this world. We know probably 98% of our listeners are in the thick of this phase. And what does that look like? Because I know that that's a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's why I love working with women in our age group because at one, it's relatable. But two, that is usually the point at which we have the most potential for growth. Because here's the thing, and I tell people this all the time, is we will not grow when we are too comfortable. And ironically, comfortable misery is still better than uncomfortable freedom.
Ooh, 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 that
So
hit.
I'd rather keep hustling for worthiness. I'd rather keep this insane schedule than I would shifting things, getting my needs met, identifying the things that aren't serving me, that I'm not liking, that are wearing me out, and figuring what that looks like. I'd rather stay in that pattern. And so usually by the time I'm working with midlife women, they've already done all the stuff and they have burned out finally. And I
Mhm.
mean, we're talking at this point decades of their life where they have been over functioning, over managing in a majority of that unhealed manager role. And now they just can't keep up.
Yeah, their nervous system is shot.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Uh-huh.
Been,
I'm raising my
been
hand here, you
there,
guys.
been there, done
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the power behind that is that we have to start leaning into the resistance that's happening inside of our body. We have to start leaning into the exhaustion and into, I mean, I worked with an executive level. I've worked with executive level CEOs where it's not uncommon for them to say, well, I've done all this great stuff. I've made lots of money. I've worked for large corporations, but I don't want to go back to work and I'm not willing to move and I'm not willing to, and I'm like, great. And they're like, well, I'm not going to have a job. And I'm like, hang on, think about everything that you've just done. Are you capable? Yes. Do you have skills? Absolutely. You're no longer young. You don't have to hustle quite as much, right? Because you got efficiency and wisdom. Now we need to start creating the life that supports you instead of the life that's burning you out.
Mm, yep. And I think we're just all we know is the life that burns us out. That's all we've known. And
Mhm.
that's all we've operated in. And so I remember thinking in the thick of my healing journey when I was working with, coach I was working with in and around the polarity space. And we talked about this because to me it was so enamoring. It was so just like, I'm like, this feels like a mystical world where these women operate and they're not stressed all of the time. And they really are operating from, really healthy feminine energy. They flow. There's a light to them, there's an aura to them. And I'm like, it just seemed impossible. And it was so fascinating, is the word I'm looking for. Fascinating to me. I'm like, that's a thing. Women can
Mhm.
operate this way? What do you
Mhm.
mean? What do you like? I could not connect the dots that you could be a high performer, a high achiever, and still operate that way. I'm like, how does this even happen? How do you own a business? How do you have kids? How do you have all of these responsibilities? And again, I always talk about the 18 hats that we wear as women, and you radiate, you flow, it looks good, it feels good, it sounds good. And I was like, it was like a myth. It was a unicorn kind of thing to me. It just felt that, but not understanding how to distinguish the manager parts played a massive role in this for me. And being able to reframe that you just gave was huge, to be able to
Yeah.
shift my energy and how I operated in very specific scenarios. It has allowed me to show up different in my marriage and my leadership roles as a mother. It is, this piece of it is so big, you guys. It is so, so big. And I love that, again, you brought up the two scenarios of the difference between how most would operate in a specific scenario in a very unhealed manager role versus when you recognize what's happening, you're able to like pull out your part of this and own your part of this, because you'll always have parts like there, you're going to have the part that you can control,
Sure.
and then you be able to separate the parts that you can't and the parts that you don't have any accountability for. And again, as Anne said, we want to take on everybody else's shit is basically what we want to do. We want to turn that into our own, and that's the unhealthy manager.
Mhm. And for record, what I want to also remind people of is that I do this for a living. I work with people all the time. I work with people on being able to identify this stuff, heal from these wounds, and I will spend the rest of my life healing from the wounds. I will spend the rest of my life keeping managers and firefighters. And then as we talk later, we're going to talk about the XL, the inner child. I will be spending the rest of my life paying attention to how those parts show up and
Hmm.
what it is that I need to do. So it's not about I did the work, I'm healed, I'm done. It's about I did the work. I now understand what to look for,
Hmm.
and now I can address it differently.
Yep.
That's really the goal of this.
Yep. You'll never get rid of
Um,
the parts. They're never going to go
nope,
away. It's understanding the parts, and that's the biggest piece of this.
that's right. And when an unhealed part shows up, it doesn't mean that you didn't do good work. It's just simply a manifestation of like I didn't figure it out yet. I
Mhm.
haven't gotten there or didn't realize that it was showing up like this.
Yep.
Because these are automated adaptations from our childhood. And I want to say that because we understand. I'm working with a coach on all the adaptations that my body has made: pelvic fracture, C-sections, foot surgeries, torn rotator cuff, and so my body has made all of these adaptations. That means that like I have all these wonky things that when I go to work out don't kind of don't work together. And just like our bodies have adaptations for injuries, wounds, surgeries, life, age, right? So do our brains, except those adaptations occurred when we were children. So we've been hanging on to those adaptations our whole stinking life, and we don't know what it looks like without them.
Yep. It's an identity we've given ourselves.
That's right. But they're just simply adaptations and responses to pain. So I really want to talk about the firefighters now
Yep. Yep. Because I think this is a good
because I'm
segue
excited
into
to talk
that.
about that's right because I'm excited to talk about the reactive parts of us. So a firefighter is the part of us that takes over when it's just too much. They are highly reactive parts and they activate when emotions break through. Their goal is to stop the emotion immediately. So, core role of a firefighter, I want you to think of it just very much like a firefighter in the wild. They're there to put out a fire. That is a not a bad thing at all. That is a good thing. But when they're, healed versus unhealed, they're going to do dramatically different stuff for us. The core role of a firefighter is to numb, distract, or escape when pain breaks through.
Mm.
A healthy or an unburdened firefighter. When it's regulated, firefighters will regulate emotions. They will be sources of relief and restoration. They will be healthy expressions of taking time for rest, taking a break when we're overwhelmed. They will be healthy sources of pleasure, and this is enjoying food, entertainment, connection. They will be sources of soothing where we can ground, we can do breathing, we can engage in calming activities when we had a really stressful week. They will be also a source of play for us with a lot of spontaneity. They will engage in fun and creative pursuits,
Hmm.
and they can actually release pain through crying, movement, emotional expression.
Your healthy
And
feminine energy.
there you go. There you go. And when they're healed, these feel like relief, softness, and a reset. And I think the phrase that I used, I think it was just yesterday when I talked about this, like when you have like a cry and you just cry and sometimes you're not even sure why you're crying.
Hmm.
Sometimes you know exactly why you're crying. And it seems to kind of overtake you. And then 30 minutes later, an hour later, and you might feel really tired, right? But you're like, oh, I'm good now. I'm
Yep.
good.
You just feel like
Right?
it's like
Like,
a weight had been lifted off. You can take a full breath again, and I love that feeling. I love that
yes.
feeling.
Yes. And that's a really powerful concept, taking a breath again. And the reason why that is that we tend to store a lot of anxiety in our chest. When it's really intense, it feels like an elephant almost sitting on your chest. And this concept of I can breathe again is literally I digested the emotions. I digested that cortisol and adrenaline when I cried. That is now out of my nervous system. And now there is no more tension here.
Yep.
And that's the power of letting it break through and actually allow that firefighter to help us cope with that. So, burden firefighters, when they are desperate to stop pain, they become extreme and highly, highly impulsive. Unhealthy expressions are things like binge eating or emotional eating, scrolling, or dopamine, any form of dopamine numbing. This could be playing Angry Birds on your phone for the second hour that day.
Yep.
It could be substance use. or overuse. That could be just simply grabbing a couple glasses of wine. Again, I know, guys, this is stuff that we all do. I'm not trying to make you feel bad about this. This is just those unhealed firefighters trying to numb you. This can also be sexual acting out or compulsive behaviors. This can be rage and emotional outburst. And this can also be dissociation and checking out. And when we're engaged in the unhealthy firefighter, what happens is it feels like urgency, loss of control, or I just need this now. It feels like a compulsion, like I can't do anything before I do this.
And I want to point out too before we move on, because I think this is really
Yep.
powerful to understand, is that the firefighter, like your firefighter doesn't show up out of anywhere, you guys. Like it doesn't just magically appear. Something cracked the manager first. There's a reason
Yep.
the firefighter is coming out. So that is, I really want you to understand. It's not like, oh, well, I just, felt like getting emotional. Something cracked that. And it could be something as little as, oh, menopause, your husband, we joke around about your husband chewing too loudly, or your day didn't go as planned as you thought, and you completely lost willpower. But the unhealed firefighter is the woman who was never taught to sit in her emotions and be able to
Hmm.
like work through those, right? So you're using something to cope, as Anne said.
Yes. And again, adaptation, because emotions, and I will fight any therapist. Come on, you can respond to me if you're a therapist. I will fight any therapist about this. Emotions are fact-based. In other words, I don't mean the story that we create, but the feelings themselves are hormonal shifts in the body. That is a fact. That is not up for subjective response. Like that is at any given time, something hurts you. I'm going to see a rise of cortisol and adrenaline if I could do a blood serum test in that moment of time. That is a fact. And this firefighter is an adaptation to what's going on inside of the body.
Yep. And
So,
menopause takes these. What I want to point out here too, as well, you guys, is just because specifically if you follow us, chances are you're, perimenopause, full blown menopause, post, whatever, wherever you're at, it takes away firefighters' natural ability to cope, right? As we talk about emotional regulation, we talk about how blood sugar regulation, you're not able to eat the same foods as you were in your 20s and 30s, and your body doesn't process them the same way. There's so many things going on internally now, hormonally, as Anne brought up, that is taking away the firefighters' tools, maybe is a really good way to put this. And so understanding this is why there's so much to, really truly being, you know, when we say heal, integrated, whatever you want to present this, is understanding like internally what's going on, but being able to regulate externally and emotionally. So hormones do play a huge role here.
so I want to give a firefighter example. Here's a situation: you text someone and they do not respond back. So you feel rejected after someone doesn't respond. I hate the fact that when I threw this into chat gave me examples that I 100% resonate. It was like it was personally targeting
Calling you
me.
out.
That's right. I was like, hang on, just like as I'm reading through this, I'm like, well, I could have gotten one a little bit less close to home. So that's a really common situation for a lot of us. And I remember this used to happen to me all the stinking time. If somebody didn't respond in the time frame that I thought was reasonable and I didn't think that there was anything else going on, then it was instantly, oh my gosh, they must be mad at me. What did I do wrong? Or oh, maybe they're still wrong. They're still really mad because I did that thing that they said that they weren't mad about, and I need to really apologize for that. Like my manager would come along, but then the firefighter, what happens? A healthy fire. This is what a healthy firefighter does. Let's go for a walk. Let's breathe.
Mhm.
Let's maybe talk to someone else about what you're feeling, right? Let's take control of the situation. Let's cope with the situation by relieving the nervous system. A burden firefighter, let's eat, let's scroll, let's numb. Don't feel this. Let's get out of this.
Yep. Yep.
I'm not paying any attention to that initial hurt. I'm just simply trying to dissociate.
Walk me through what happens in a woman's body the 30 seconds before a firefighter takes over. Because that angst that you feel that builds up, and then you just immediately, like, what is that? And I know you know exactly what I'm trying to describe and put that into words, but anybody listening to understands that feeling, that just, when you get so upset and so worked up, that just that emotion that's happening in your body.
Yes. And usually what this is for a lot of us is it, I think the way that I prefer talking about it is the way the world likes to talk about it is triggers. The way that I like to talk about it is usually an awakening. So at some point in our life, usually in childhood and beyond, we have felt rejected. And I think little girls really relate to this because by the time we're in junior high, I'm not even sure how women can become friends later on in life, because really middle school, we're awful to each other. And how we're specifically awful to each other is we ostracize people when they hurt our feelings. We gang up on them. We get a whole bunch of our friends. We kind of gossip about what this one girl did to us that was just absolutely awful. And then we keep them out of our lives, right? And the pain of that exists for a lot of us in, as an example, middle school, is that rejection that resurfaces, that awakens when somebody doesn't respond back via text. We get this
Mm,
instant rush of cortisol and adrenaline because we are inherently a group species. We are meant to be in connection with other people. Women in particular, we are very emotionally related. So it makes sense why in middle school, the way that we attack each other is relationally. Boys, they
mm.
just punch each other. Girls, we go for the heart. We go
Cutthroat.
deep.
They're, oh my
Yes,
gosh, kids are brutal. They're so mean.
we are. We are. And again, that's a lot of middle school girls. There's a lot of unhealed firefighters. Those were adaptations of wounds that existed earlier in life that they learned how to address and
Mm,
react to, right? So we get this rush of cortisol and adrenaline. I'll explain it from the addiction piece in relationship to food. And then somewhere along the line, likely childhood, we realized that food was always available for us. We had stock pantries, we had sugar, we had processed food in the pantry. And I know that even when I came home from middle school, if I had a rough day and my friends didn't like me, it was always present? Food. My
hmm.
mom wasn't always present. She didn't always know how to help me. She sometimes would make my feelings about her. My dad was off at work.
Yep.
Not because they weren't good people. They were amazing people who loved me. They just didn't know how to do that type of work and how to show up for my feelings.
Mhm.
But I could go and have food. And so what happens over time is that when we keep going and getting that like insulin spike, okay, what happens over
Dopamine hit.
time is we get the dopamine hit the
Hmm.
moment we make a decision to eat the food.
Oof. Oh, you guys, hopefully this is connecting. Oh my gosh, this is so powerful when you understand why you reach for the wine or the chips or whatever it is. Like this is
Yes.
so powerful.
And I just want to point out that dopamine is not a pleasure chemical. It is a prediction chemical.
Mm.
That so it's predicting relief. It's saying, "Oh yeah, I remember this. This has been decades in the making. That chocolate always satisfied." Matter of fact, recently this happened just a couple days ago when I texted somebody kind of a vulnerable text message. I couldn't talk to them on the phone and they didn't respond and they didn't respond and then they didn't respond. And I'm sitting there and I just had lunch and I thought, there's some chocolate in the pantry. Now, mind you, I can have chocolate, right? Chocolate's not the issue.
Yep.
Yeah. But I was feeling really, really butthurt about it.
Yep. This is the power of understanding where you go. Oh, there's you. I hope you guys are like soaking this in right now. There is so much power here. If this is like this needs to connect. This like
But
hopefully the
yes,
bells are going off. It's ringing inside your head because it's never about like Ann said. It's never about the wine. It's never about the chocolate.
no.
It's never. It's always what led up to the needing to have those things.
And it's just simply a symptom. And if
Yep.
we look at it as a symptom and not a failure, you're going to get so much farther in figuring it out and working through it and actually changing it than if you keep beating yourself up because you grabbed the stinking chocolate.
Yep.
It's not about the chocolate.
Yep. This is we talk about breaking the pattern. This is how you
That's right.
understand how to break the pattern in the loop. And I talk about this. It's like I'm addicted to sugar, and I no, I think there's a lot more coping mechanisms behind the sugar than I am just now. Don't get me wrong. The U.S. and our food and the way it's manufactured, yes, it is highly like it's satiating. It's palatable. We want like it tastes really good, but there is so much more going on internally. If, like Ann said, you're reaching for the whatever it is because that's what relieves and that's the only comfort you have, and that's how you disconnect, and that's how you unwind from a long day.
That's right. That's right. And we're addicted to the dopamine. That's what we're addicted to.
Yep.
We're addicted to our body's reaction to the substance that we are consuming once we decide to go consume it for relief.
Yep.
It hits different too when we're using it to emotionally soothe than when we're just having it naturally.
Yep. And it's
Uh-huh.
like, because this just sounds good. I'm out for dinner with my husband and it's somewhat of a special event. The dessert menu's fire. Of course, I want to eat this because that's part of living your best life. And that's the experience of, going out with your husband and having dinner and, something available that you don't typically have access to is completely different than I reached for the chocolate lava cake because my day was so stressful and this is how I unwind.
And I'll give you one really big tell for when to tell it's healthy and when to tell it's not healthy as a symptom. When it is healthy and we have that chocolate or that dessert when we're out with our husband, usually what happens is we stop eating. We're able to eat a couple bites and we're already full from dinner. We're like, oh, that was really good, really tasty. I had my fill, that was really rich. When it's emotional, we eat a little bit, that didn't satisfy us. We keep eating. We think and we're like, well, I already had food. I know that I'm not hungry, but it didn't quite quench it. So then we wind up eating random stuff through the house or more sugar. And it's because it's trying to relieve pain. It's like trying to scratch an itch that you can't scratch with that.
I used to wake up with a pint of Ben and Jerry's next to my bed. And I don't even remember eating the whole pint. It was just, it was like, it was a subconscious thing. And I just kept eating. I'm like, did I really eat that whole thing? And I would wake up with the chocolate ring around my face that was like
Mhm.
crusted on. I'm like, did I like dive into it? Was I like licking the container and I wasn't aware? Because how do I have a whole chocolate ring all over my face? But it was such a subconscious thing. But food for me was like Ann said, it gave me a sense of power because it's the only thing I had control over. But B, it was that dopamine hit that I was going for. It numbed the feelings. It's just the
Yep.
best way to put it. And
Yep.
it again, when you understand this, windows and doors open for you.
Yeah, because you didn't know how to get relief otherwise. You
Hmm.
didn't know how to talk about it. You didn't know how to process through it. You didn't actually
Yep.
know how to feel it in such a way to get it out.
Yep.
And here's an emotional truth of firefighters: they don't care about consequences, they only care about relief. That is it.
Ooh, ooh, that's powerful.
Yeah. So I want to talk about how firefighters and managers work together before I talk about the third part. Um, just to kind of sum this up. So managers try to prevent pain, and firefighters jump in when managers fail.
Hmm.
So an example of this is the manager comes in and says, "Be perfect so no one rejects you." Well, that doesn't work. You still feel rejection. Okay, or you weren't perfect. And then the firefighter says, "Okay, numb it. Food, scrolling, escape. Let's deal with this." And sometimes we're doing all three at the same time. Sometimes we're sitting on the couch, binging food, doom scrolling on our phone, and the TV's on.
Yep.
And then the manager returns and says, "Why did you do that? You need more control. You need to diet tomorrow." And then the cycle just intensifies. So the stronger your manager is, the stronger the firefighter response has to be. I just
Ooh,
want to point that out.
yeah, that makes sense.
So the harder you try to control the firefighter, the greater the response of the firefighter.
Mm, that makes sense.
So here's a key insight. I just realized you can hear my dogs barking now. All right.
Fine,
So
you're in the living room
both
with us.
well, yep. Both parts are actually trying to protect the exiles. And we're going to talk about the exiles next. And the exiles are essentially what I like to refer to often as an inner child. And this is the main part of the whole parts that has to pay attention to. And you might say, "Well, Anne, why didn't you start there?" And you will see why. It's because normally the reason that I don't start with exiles or the inner child is because the parts that tend to bother us the most or trip us up the most are the managers and the firefighters.
Hmm.
So the exile carries deeper wounds of things like shame, rejection, and abandonment. And managers say, "Don't let that wound get touched at all." Whereas firefighters say, "It got touched, shut it down now."
Yep. Oh,
So most people try to eliminate the firefighters. They try to stop binging, they try to stop scrolling. They work so hard to try to manage the behaviors without addressing the feelings and without addressing the pressure that the manager is feeling. And this always fails.
always backfire. This is you trying to get rid of them instead of getting really curious with your parts. That's what we talk about, like getting curious and asking questions and understanding why this part is showing up for you.
Yes. So, like, the more intense the manager, the more extreme the firefighter.
Mhm.
And so I want you to think about times in your life that you have doubled down and you've done some wonky diet where you eliminated half of the things that you enjoyed, and you started working out and you were at horribly low calories. You were trying so hard and felt so proud of yourself for that few days, that few weeks that maybe you could eke that out. And then suddenly you had all this rebound eating, you stopped working out, you kind of let everything go, and then you felt like a failure all over again. And that's the exact cycle that we're talking about, is a manager and a firefighter. And the more extreme the manager, the bigger the firefighter shows up.
Yep.
Okay, so what are exiles? Exiles are parts of you that carry unresolved emotional pain. These are wounds. And the way that I like to talk about this is that all of us carry wounds from our childhood. So we are, at the age that I am now in my 50s, I am exactly who I was when I was 4, 6, 8, 10, 16, 20, 30, 40, and
Mm.
so on. Okay. I'm all of those parts of me and all of that history. And so if there was things that happened to me when I was a little kid that really hurt me and I never got to talk about them and I never got to process those or cry over them or get that need met, what happens is I carry that wound with me into now adulthood. Think about it like I had a client once who she went in for a foot, her foot was bothering her, and the doctor said, "Well, when did you break your foot?" And she said, "What?" And he said, "No, you broke your foot." And he showed her the x-rays and she was like, "Oh my gosh." And it dawned on her back in junior high, something happened in PE class. Her foot really hurt for a few weeks. She complained about it to her parents, but her parents said she was making it up and that she would be fine.
Mm,
That wound didn't leave her. It still
yep.
carried with her. And so even though the pain felt different, it showed back up in adult life. That is a physical body representation. Our emotional wounds are no different than our physical wounds because they're reality based. In other words, that cortisol and adrenaline that you experienced when something painful happened to you as a little kid, that is still with you until we are an adult and we learn how to get rid of it. And the exiles carry things like shame, rejection, just these things that I mentioned already, but abandonment, loneliness, fear, and then grief. And they're called exiles in particular because the system, essentially your brain, tries to push them out of awareness because they feel too overwhelming or threatening to experience it directly. The core function of an exile is simply exiles are trying not to control anything. They are wounded, they are emotional, and they are needing care, not control. They
Hmm.
often carry the belief that something is wrong with me, or I am not safe, loved, or worthy enough.
When I was doing my polarity coaching, David had presented this in a way and it really hit for me. But he's like, Nicole, I need you to understand that most exiles, they're young kids, like under the age of 10 years old, right? Like it's something you need, like you have a 5-year-old running your marriage at this point. You have an 8-year-old who's packing your food at 10 p.m. every single night. And until you meet that little girl's going to keep running the show. And that, I
Yeah.
don't know what it was about that, but I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Like it just clicked for, I was like, he's so right. He is so right. And understanding again, like this is no longer, when we talk about exiles, we're not talking about adult behavior. We're talking to the little, like we're talking to the little girl inside of us that was
Yes.
wounded. And
Yes.
that clicked for me. And I was like, oh, damn, damn, dang.
Yes. Yes. And just again, like that wound carries through. So those things that you were doing to try to manage the pain, and this is where I think sometimes as grown women, we feel like little kids. We really, really do. One of the least favorite questions that people receive from me when they're in therapy is I'll say to them, "How old do you feel right now?" That it's really interesting when somebody is a professional and has a very high position or they've been in like a high status for a really long time and I ask them that and they're like, "What do you mean?"
Hmm.
I had somebody look at me once and she goes, are you mocking me right now?" And I'm like, "No, no, no. I want you to think about how old does this feel?"
Yeah, that can be a hard question to sit with. Like
Yes.
it can feel triggering for sure. I could see that.
But once you get really attuned to it, what's powerful about it is that it becomes easier to spot and also easier to manage when
Hmm.
instead of like looking at it like there's something wrong with me because I feel like a little kid, instead it's like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like a little kid, something got awakened in me."
Yep. Yep.
So, healthy exiles or unburdened exiles, when they are healed, they don't disappear, they actually transform. They become sources of emotional depth. They have tremendous capacity for connection and they have sensitivity without being overwhelmed with that sensitivity. Healthy expressions of an exile that has been healed is they are able to be vulnerable and share feelings without collapsing. They have authenticity with other people. They don't have to try it and hide their true self to other people. It doesn't matter the situation or the event, they're showing up completely as themselves. They have emotional openness. They can feel sadness, grief, joy fully and without editing themselves. They have deep levels of connection and they're able to trust other people and
Mhm.
attach securely. And they also have compassion and empathy for not just other people, but themselves.
Mm.
And what this feels like when they are healed is softness. This is that feminine energy, openness, and grounded emotion.
Oof. Yeah. And a lot of those emotions almost feel impossible. I know for me, when I first started my work, I'm like, what do you mean soft? I don't know soft. I can't be soft. have too many things on my to-do list. Soft
Yep.
people don't get things done.
Yes.
How am I going to be soft and execute? I don't think you understand, David. My list is a mile long. I have a team. Like, what do you mean? Like, I just was so confused at this whole idea that you could be grounded and soft and flow and feel good doing it. Like, that was just a completely foreign concept to me.
Yes. Well, and like that unhealed manager came in to protect the soft,
Yep.
vulnerable, authentic you.
Yep, it did for sure. Trying to protect, exactly protect and justify it. Like, no, nope, you have too much to get done. You can't possibly show a softer side of yourself. If you show a softer side, people are going to walk over you. You're not going to be able to get the things done that you need to get done. You need to live in, and all I knew was this hyper masculine state, but not even a healthy masculine state. I operated from a very toxic masculine state. And, masculine, feminine is not specific to our genders. We all hold masculine and feminine, traits and tendencies regardless of our gender. But I very much so, all I lived and operated from was a very, very wounded, toxic masculine place.
Hmm. Hmm. So, an example of a healthy exile is the situation that I have is someone gives you feedback, just critical feedback or critique, and a healthy exile response is that stings a little, but I'm still okay. There's feeling without being flooded by it. A burden exile, on the other hand, when they carry that unresolved trauma or shame, they become incredibly overwhelmed with the feeling. So it has an intense emotional charge. And that's because there are distorted beliefs that are actually formed in that pain. And this is where I say neurons that wire together fire together. So if I got this message when I was 6 or 8 that there was something inherently wrong with me or I wasn't good enough, and usually I can go back with people, we can identify the place, and they'll say, I don't know why I'm thinking about this. It's such a stupid story. And it winds up being a really relevant story. But when we're carrying that, then that message that I got, the message that I wasn't good enough, then it resurfaces every single time my body feels the exact same thing every single time. And so now by the time we're 30, 40, 50, what happens is those neurons that have wired together is every single moment in your life that you felt like you weren't good enough. And
Mm.
so now there's this tremendous decades long charge. And this is why we act so wild when we
Yeah.
get triggered. This is why people are going off on other people in social media and why there's so much road rage is because it's awakening something that's lived inside of them for way too long that keeps getting hit.
Oof. And for me, what I realized too, and I'm going to get really vulnerable here, is that I would seek that out. I would seek out these irrational, like just I would just have all out meltdowns with my husband. And I would purposely seek to trigger him because there was something in me that was looking to then trigger him. It gave me worth to being able to then,
Yep.
mediate and, what's the word I'm diffuse the situation. And therefore I'm the one that started it. And my worth was then, fulfilled and came full circle by being the one that diffused it.
Yep. That's exactly it.
Yep. And that was when oh damn, I remember that specific session with David. And when he pointed that out, like, oh yeah, I was triggered. I was like, I don't start these things on purpose. No, absolutely not. What are you talking about? He did that thing, and that thing made me upset. He didn't realize how hard I work and all the stress and pressure. Oh no, it was absolutely me. It was 100% me. And when you can connect those dots, this is just, I love talking about this stuff because it's just been so powerful for me.
Yes, yes. And the power behind that is that we repeat what we don't repair. And that's because your
Mhm.
nervous system, not this part, not the thinking part, the prefrontal cortex that is not in our awareness, our nervous system is seeking to repair that. And so it's trying to give us multiple opportunities to like essentially fulfill that wound and heal that wound. And it gives us multiple opportunities by actually inventing those opportunities.
Yep. Mm.
And that is not in our awareness.
Yep. Subconscious for sure.
That's right.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
right. Just like you were saying. And I did something very similar in my own marriage. It's one of the reasons why I love couples therapy so much is that what I say to people is that most of the things in life are attachment related. We get wounded in the context of relationships. We also can heal in the context of relationships.
Hmm. Oh, you absolutely can. And I'm telling you right now, for anybody who struggles to communicate with their spouse or with their partner, parts work has allowed, and Matt went through this with me, which allows us to communicate in a completely different way. But to be able to have a conversation with him and be like, well, my parts are triggered right now. This is what my parts are telling me. Understanding it's not myself, right? And I know at that point, if my parts are triggered, there's something internally going on, something trying to keep me safe. This is absolutely a me thing. And so this is, really truly to give you your power back. Because when I started this work, and it's slightly different. I started this work to really find my feminine energy and really be able to operate from more of a peaceful, grounded space. But I had this idea when I started this work that I could only be feminine if Matt was masculine. Matt
Uh-huh.
put me in my feminine. So therefore, if Matt wasn't masculine enough, then I couldn't be feminine. And that's how a lot of women operate. It's like, I can only if this person triggered me, this person. It's like, no, 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 no. You are in complete and total control of your own emotions, your own femininity, how you operate, how you show up. Now it's really hard, and I'm not saying I'm always perfect because damn does he still trigger me at times, but I'm able to look at that and it's like I might have moments where I blurt out and my, firefighters are coming out, and then, I have exiles trying to, very wounded ones trying to take over, but I'm able to pull myself back and just really think about this in a different space because again, I always wanted to put it on him. I'm upset because he did the thing. I'm
Yeah,
upset because he, whatever it is. But it's, again, you can't always control the cards that are dealt. You can control how you play the game kind of concept.
that's
And it
right.
is 100% on you, your reactions
That's
to
it.
these situations. And when you take ownership of that, and it's not always comfortable, you guys believe me, there have been plenty of moments where I've cried, I have kicked, I have screamed, I've just been so emotional and sobbing and just it's not easy, but when you grasp the work and you're able, like Ann said, it's a continual, like the post always moves. I'm never going to be 100% healed, but I can tell you right now how I communicate in my marriage, for my team, for just my child, everybody else around me is it is a night and day difference. It's like apples and oranges, and I am so much less reactive to things that would just completely send me for a tizzy. And
Yes.
there's just so much power being able to regulate your nervous system, as
Yes.
Anne said, ding ding ding, and your own emotions
Yes.
without the responsibility of somebody else, relying on somebody else to control your emotions. Because that's what I would do. It was Matt's responsibility to make me happy. It was Matt's responsibility when he triggered me. It was Matt's responsibility. And it's like, no, 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 no. That's not his work. That's my work.
Yes. And you're giving away all your power when you do that.
Yep.
I just want to say that because and I tell people like yes there are legitimate situations in which I understand your frustration is valid, your anxiety, your hurt is valid. And if you can't figure out how it is that you're going to respond to this and what boundaries that you need to set, you
Yep.
will forever live disempowered and dysregulated forever
Mm-hmm.
because that is your responsibility. And I have so many people, maybe we need to do one on boundaries. Maybe we did. I'm not sure. All right.
I'm
But
sure we
we have
have,
so
I'm
many
sure we
people
can do
that are
another
like,
episode and it'll hit hard.
that's right. But I have so many people that are like, but I set the boundary and they didn't listen to me. Oh, no, 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 no. That is not a boundary. That is a rule that you just set. A boundary is this is how I'm going to respond when you don't do this or when you do this. That
Yep.
is 100% actionable by you.
Yep.
So common burdens and common themes behind unhealed exiles. These are the phrases that I hear often. I'm not enough. I'm too much. I'll be abandoned. I'm unlovable. I'm unsafe. I'm not worthy. Those are common things. And here's a therapy freebie. If you are saying, I think that someone else doesn't think I'm enough, or I believe that they think I'm unworthy, or they think that, or nothing I do is ever good enough for them, that is now a projection on the other person. That is coming from inside of you.
Yep. 100%. I want you to understand, you guys, and really tie this back to, yes, all aspects of your life, but I want you to tie this back to weight loss because I promise you, you will not
Mm-hmm.
be the woman who loses, whatever it is, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever amount of pounds that you have to lose with the quote unquote perfect plan or this discipline that you think that you need to have. You are going to lose the weight when you finally meet the girl that you've been feeding your entire life.
Yes.
That's when
Oh,
you're going to lose the weight.
Nicole, mic drop. You will finally wait, you will finally lose the, can you say that again? You will finally lose the weight.
When you meet the little girl that you've been feeding for the last 40 years,
Bingo.
right there. And I promise you, that's when it clicks. That's when you take your power back. That's when you own your decisions.
Yes. Yes. So, so powerful. So powerful. I think we just need to finish right now. Okay. No, no,
That
I've
was a
got some
mic
more.
drop. Sometimes you have them, sometimes I haven't, but I'll take that one.
Emotional flooding. So these are signs of that unhealed exile again. Lots of emotional flooding, waves of sadness, panic, shame, hypersensitivity. Small triggers feel really huge. You can't take any form of positive feedback or criticism. You can't even hear people share their feelings with you or things that you've done that have hurt them. So that is evidence that you've got an unhealed kid inside of you.
Hmm.
We become desperate for validation and external validation, external acknowledgement from another person. You have to see that I'm doing a good job for me to actually be doing a good job. We have tremendous, again, these are these unhealed exiles, tremendous fear of abandonment, rejection, and lots of collapse and shutdown. One of the other themes that I see with people that underfunction more often is they will say, "What's the point?" These are inner child painful reactions, and they feel like overwhelming, raw, young, and out of control.
Yep, I do. And that's, guys, I'm not gonna, this work is hard. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to sit with these emotions. It's uncomfortable to acknowledge these parts that are coming out. But when you sit with it long enough, the power that you give yourself back when you understand, oh, oof, 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 oof.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's freeing.
And I want to touch on why an exile gets exiled because I think that this is really powerful information, especially for a lot of us that are incredibly competent, high functioning women. This doesn't make any sense to us because, and I hear a lot of women say, but I had parents who loved me. I have good parents. I had everything that I need. I was involved in lots of things. I had everything that I needed in life. How could I possibly have wounds in childhood? Well, this is the reason why exiles get exiled. And I want you to listen to this because at some point, usually very early on in life, that a little kid's emotions were too big, the environment was not safe enough, and there was no one to help you process them. This is not about a parent who doesn't love you. This is about a parent who lacked skill sets. That's it. Nobody taught your
Mm.
parent how to talk about their feelings. So
Yes.
they don't know how to help you with yours. So your nervous system and your brain adapted to this. And managers come online and say, well, I'm never going to let this happen again. And firefighter says, if it does, I'll shut it down. And exiles got pushed completely out of awareness.
Yep.
And I hear people talk about things like that, where they'll say, as a kid, this thing happened to me. And then, like, I got bullied in school and I was never friends with a girl again. And they're now in their 40s and they don't have any relationship with any females. They can only have relationship with men because they got bullied by females. That's a manager that shut that relationship down. It didn't want to feel the pain again. And it's let you avoid it. But in the process of that, you have not gotten healthy connection
Hmm.
from safe women who have healed.
Yes. 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 Women who have
And
healed,
we're
others
out
who have
there.
healed. Yes. And we are. And, I think there's a lot of power to introducing this to those in your life, sharing these podcast episodes to those that you are closest to. I mean, there's so
Yes.
much power in asking others around you that you're close to help to heal themselves. Everybody has unchildhood trauma. Everybody, this exists for everybody. I don't care who you are. This
Yep.
exists in some sort of fashion for you. So being able to really truly do the work here is,
Yes.
yeah,
And if you can't identify any of it and you really say, well, I still struggle with food and I had this lovely upbringing and these perfect parents and that kind of stuff, you have a very strong manager that is protecting you from your just the feelings that would come up from even acknowledging that your parents were imperfect.
yeah,
And every parent, no matter how wonderful they are, no matter how loving and amazing they are, have imperfections because we're all human.
we are all absolutely, absolutely.
I know I've made plenty of mine. I hear about them
What do you mean? I'm not a
often.
perfect parent. I'm absolutely a perfect parent. What are you talking about? But this has allowed me when I do parent and when I am, my son's older and, we're getting into girlfriends and we're getting into just so many, like this, like uncharted territory for me. And it has allowed me to have conversations with Jace in a completely approaching things in a completely different way. And has allowed me to allow him to explore his emotions and then get really curious with his own emotions. Like, why is this triggering to you right now? Why are
Mhm.
you upset? Help me understand what's coming up for you. And, as a teenage boy, he's 14, he's going to be 15 this year. He rolls his eyes. And I'm like, no, Jace, really, like, what is, like, help me understand. Where's the disconnect coming from? Because I'm not understanding why you are so upset with me right now. So, really, truly being able to communicate with him has just been, and again, he rolls his eyes and it takes a lot for me to pull it out of him, but eventually I do. And then we're able to get to the root of what's really going on instead of just brushing it. Like you said, your mom,
Yes.
not that she was doing it to be mean or hurtful. You came home and you reached for the pantry to heal your emotions. She just didn't understand how to even figure out what was going on, what was under those emotions. Why are we reaching? She didn't know the questions to ask. You don't get, and so again, it's not because a lot of, and I hear this too, I hear it often. I had a great childhood. My parents were amazing. And absolutely, this is
Hmm.
just, again, it doesn't have to come from this massive traumatic event, I guess is what I'm trying to say. When you have
Yes.
these feelings and this unchild or this unresolved conflict.
Yes. Yes. And I think there's a lot of power too in being able to identify, so because sometimes people will say, well, I did it to myself. I'm making up these stories myself, or it hurt me because I'm super sensitive or something like that. It's all about me. That's that shame piece that's trying to protect you from admitting that there's some grief around some of your parents. And sometimes the pain that we feel is because nothing was said in vital moments. And we can go back and we can say, well, I didn't share that with anybody, but there's a reason why you didn't share it,
Yep.
because you knew it wasn't going to be received in a healthy way.
Yep, 100%. And your entire life is organized around avoiding pain. You guys, that's what we're wired for. We're wired to avoid the discomfort, to avoid the pain. That's why sitting with this is so uncomfortable. And this is the work that doesn't get talked about enough because and you guys hear me talk about this. I've said it in multiple podcasts, but what's going on in between your two ears is the hardest piece because you can't hold it. It's not tangible, right? It is that discomfort that you have to sit in and the rooted awakening when you're like, holy shit, it's been me the entire time. It really is truly me. It's me and how I react. Again, you can't always control the cards that are dealt, but it's absolutely up to you to determine how you play the game. And
That's
that
right.
is hard. It's hard to take that accountability. It's extremely hard to take that ownership.
Oh yeah. And when I was doing this work, I'm convinced it was 2 years of solid shame, because I could I could spot the pain and I could go back and I can identify some of the wounds, and then I felt all new pain because I realized that as a parent I had done the exact same things that I tried not to do. And so
Mm,
so the deeper I got into my own healing, ironically the worse I felt for a while, because I realized that I was making some of the same mistakes, and the only way that I knew how to cope with that is by making myself feel awful for making the mistake, which is
yep.
an unhealed manager.
Yep. 100%. And needing to understand, you guys, that naming this doesn't let you off the hook either, right? It's not like you just get to name this feeling that's coming out and say, oh, well, that's a part. So it doesn't matter. I actually had this conversation with my husband. It's like we can both
Okay.
have parts that come out, but parts don't get to justify the behavior. Parts don't get to justify just because it's a part doesn't make it okay. We can
Yep.
recognize that it's a part and where the part stems from. And that's a big piece of the picture. It's a lot of the work here, but it doesn't justify, it doesn't get you off the hook. You're still responsible for the action once you understand the part that's coming out.
That's right. Yep. All right. So I want to kind of recap some of this. Um, the entire life, you mentioned this earlier, your entire life is organized around avoiding this pain. So managers, just to recap, try to prevent it, firefighters try to numb it, and the exile remains untouched and isn't able to speak. So the cycle: prevent, fail, react, repeat,
Mm,
over and over and over again. And I just want to highlight, you're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because you're protecting something. Again, the behaviors that you are struggling with, the grabbing for the chocolate, the glass of wine, the doom scrolling, that is not the problem. That is a symptom of something that's going on inside of you.
yep,
And when we're unhealed, we're going to overanalyze stuff. We're going to try to fix things. We're going to assume rejection before even checking it out. We're going to do a lot of things simply in a protective mode. But when we're healed, you can actually feel these feelings without completely spiraling. You don't need to control everyone or everything or yourself. You can stay present in your discomfort and notice it and feel it. That is processing.
yep,
Okay. And I'm not talking about shame spirals. Those are very different. We are not processing anything with shame. We just simply want to avoid and do better next time. Um, and you begin to trust yourself in relationships, but most importantly, not just trust yourself in relationship, but open yourself up in relationships.
100%. When you realize too, I think there's a lot of power to understanding that. And I can speak for me specifically on my journey. It was like, once I lose the weight, then I'll be quote unquote healed, right? Everything's going to be
See,
better once I lose the weight. And it's like, you guys, Your girl's been 100 plus pounds overweight and I've been ripped and shredded. I can promise you the girl that was ripped and shredded was absolutely not healed because it was never about the weight to begin with.
No, no. And it's so funny because that's what I thought attachment was. My entire goal in life was to be pretty and successful and look a certain way and be a certain weight and wear certain shoes and clothes and all the things. And if I had all the things, then I would have friends because that's what I saw people who looked like that I admired, that's what they had, that connection, right? And what wound up happening is I just made myself really intimidating and incredibly neurotic and not fun to be around.
Yep. It's almost like when you think that, I remember I used to think when I was just struggling to make ends meet and paycheck to paycheck, and I always thought the things would make me happy. I always thought when I had the house, when I had the,
Yes.
and it's just like I have the things, and the things never made me happy either. So
Yep.
people talk about, yeah, sure, money helps to make things a bit easier. I'm not going to discount that, but it doesn't heal you. It's not about the things. It's not about the weight. It was never about those things. It's just the unhealed internal shit that most people use all the money, the physical appearance, the things to numb. That's what you're
Yes.
doing. You're using them as a form to numb.
Yes. Yes. And most of us are wanting a lot of those things because ultimately we want connection.
hmm And it makes us feel approved. Like it's almost like we're a part of something, right? Like it's like, oh, somebody sees me as I have the big house and I drive the nice car and I have the designer bag. I'm seen as more than, right? Like it seems like I've made it. I am in this elite status.
Worthy enough.
Exactly. And that is, social media is just such, it's only amplified all of this for all of
That's
us.
right.
And we're all guilty of this. I do this. I do this when judgment of, not even necessarily my physique anymore. I get that from time to time. It doesn't show up nearly as much for me as it used to. But specifically when I look at those that have achieved business wise for me, it's still something that shows up. I have a hard time not comparing. And I have a hard time saying, well, when I fix this thing, then I'll be happy. But I understand, right? I'm like, okay, this exile's coming out. Like, what are they trying to tell to me right now? Like, what are we protecting? Because it's not about the next big achievement. It's not about X amount of followers. It's not about, has nothing to do with any of that. Absolutely
Mhm.
any of that. I've been able to come down. My worth and I shouldn't say my worth, but I love the connection piece of this. That's why I continue to have a business. And you know how many times I've thought about, if I'm being completely vulnerable, just shutting it all down? I have
Mm.
thought about that so many times because nobody starts a business going, oh, this is going to be easy, right? Like, I don't think anybody goes into business thinking that, but you do not realize the amount of two by fours that you take to your face starting your own business and
Oh
how
yeah.
much energy and work. And if you're not an entrepreneur, it's just something that you can't quite grasp until you're in the thick of it. And Matt has given me, I mean, bless his soul, he has come in at times basically almost demanding that I do if I do not work through a lot of the stuff that has come out for me because it was ruining me. And it came down to it's not about the money for me. It's not about we would be just fine. He can provide. That's his role. That's his lane. It's not mine. It's the connection. I love the
Yeah.
connection. I really love coming in and the women in the community that we've been able to build. It fulfills. It lights something in me, and that is something that has again, this, and so these parts definitely come out for me when I will see somebody that is quote unquote farther along in business for me, or maybe has done something and incorporated something that, because I try to be so innovative with what we offer on the team and how much support. I really do pride myself on that. Your journey becomes our journey. It's never about numbers. It never has been for me. You are an individual and we're going to show up for you as an individual. And so when I see people doing things that maybe I hadn't thought about, I automatically start to, well, Nicole, what was your deal? Why didn't you? I'm like, and I am able to spot that really, really quickly right now. And the only thing that has been able to keep me in the game is understanding that, right? Like it's again, my worth is not attached to how much revenue I do. My worth is not attached to how many women we coach. My worth is not attached to any, like I don't need to work like my husband. That's his role, that's his responsibility, that's his lane. But I do it because honestly, the connection and understanding that piece of it is allowed to stay, like has allowed me to stay in the game.
Hmm. Oh yeah. It's very purpose driven and value driven for you.
Yep. It very much so is. And I didn't realize that, but again, for the longest time, it was my worth was attached to the performance, and my worth is
Yep.
no longer attached to the performance of my business.
Yeah.
It could
And
all
isn't
go in flames tomorrow and I would be okay. No, what do I want that? I'm not asking, right? Like that's not what I'm seeking, but I'm just saying I would be okay. And a year ago, you told me oh my gosh, like even just talking about that would have sent me into a complete and total tizzy. And so there's the healed work, and when and again, I'm not 100% healed, but when you do the work, the freedom that is allowed and the nervous system, like just being able to regulate my nervous system. Like if you would have told me that a year ago, oh my God, I wouldn't have been able to breathe. I would have like started like hyperventilating. And now I can talk about it so freely. And it's just because again, I've been able to disconnect who I am. I'm Nicole. I'm not a business owner. I'm Nicole who has a lot to offer in a lot of different areas that have nothing to do with my business or becoming her. Or, and again, before that, I couldn't disassociate from those things.
Oh, that's so powerful. I love that. I love that example. And I think even just even our interaction has changed so much just with the
Oh,
authenticity that you've been able to bring and just be even for me to be able to see how you're lighting up pursuing the things that you value
mm,
and giving yourself freely instead of anxiously making sure that everything is in control and doing okay.
yeah.
Um, and guys, there is it like it is such a beautiful thing when you can show up authentically.
Mhm.
And if you're not there, that's what we're going to talk about episode 3, how to heal
Yay.
parts of you that still
Yeah.
feel unsafe.
I'm
So stay tuned. Come
I'm
back.
yes, come back for episode 3 because we're going to tie it all together. And hopefully, this has been well, I can't even say hopefully. If this has not been powerful for you, then you are not ready to sit down and do the work. That I can promise you. If you're looking at this, you're like, oh, you're just kind of like, what's the big deal? th- you're not in a place to ready. And there was for a while I wasn't ready to do the work. I wasn't ready to see it. I wasn't ready to, heal the wounds inside of me. And it got to a point where it's just like it was I couldn't
You didn't
function
have an option.
anymore. I didn't have an option. That's
Yep.
exactly what it was. There was no option. It was like, well, maybe I might. No, this isn't a maybe I might. This is like almost a do or die situation. And
Yep.
so I'm excited to, bring this all together and tie it up with a little pretty pink bow. Anything to add before we wrap
Oh,
this up?
I think we covered it. I think we covered it. Guys, this is good. This is amazing, honestly. It is amazing work. I know it sounds probably for some of you it sounds a little woo-woo. It is a little woo-woo. But hang on. Sometimes woo-woo stuff actually works.
And this is coming from the girl who fought the woo. I fought the woo for the long time. You guys
Oh,
believe me.
me
Believe
too.
me, I
This
fought
is
the
my
woo.
field.
I love that. I have loved connecting you. Side note, and before we wrap up, but I seriously have. It's been so powerful. I know you say that on my end, but I love to. Anne came out for, I don't know, you heard what, 4 days when you came out last fall? We heard for
Uh-huh.
about 4 days and being able to spend 4 days with you in that period. And for you to, it's just, I love being able to sit down and connect with, same struggles and same limiting beliefs that we have. And just understanding that this is what you do. Like you said, you do this for a living and you're just as vulnerable to these things. You're
Oh
just
my
as,
gosh.
and when it's your own journey, again, there's just so much to understand there. We get so caught up in our own space. It's really hard to pull us out and look at things from 1,000 foot view. And like you said, I know you said, it's really been powerful to sit down with me, but same thing for you because I'm like, holy shit, girlfriend is one of the smartest people I know, one of the most successful people I know, and
Oh,
has
thank
the
you.
same struggles and has the
Yes.
same limiting beliefs and has the same. And so when you feed me, like, and I know you don't just feed me compliments to feed me compliments, but it just me being able to recognize those. We were having a conversation yesterday back and forth, and I were texting about some things, and she said something, and I'm like, you want to know what? Thank you. I fully receive that. I truly
Mm.
fully receive that. And being able to own so much part of that work, it just used to feel cocky to me. It used to feel like I would just sweep things underneath the rug, right? And I was just like, well, no, no, because I always had more work to do. It wasn't enough. It's like, oh, you said I did this thing, but no, 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 because I still have to do
Yep.
this, this, and this. I don't think you understand. I'm not there yet. Side note, you're never going to get there, honey. I promise you, coming from the girl that's built a multi seven figure business, you're never going to get there. It's never going to, the accomplishments will always, your goalposts will keep moving until you do the work. And so being
Yeah.
able to look at
Oh
that
yeah.
yesterday and recognize and be like, no, thank you. I really do. I received that. And it felt really good. And so the interactions, everything about relationships around you are just so much better when you were able to sit down and do the work.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, all right, I think we're gonna end on that. And if you guys find value to this, likes, comments,
Yes.
engagement, like share, tag us. It means so very much. Make sure that you're following the podcast. Make sure that you rate the episode. Make sure that you leave comments, and we shall see you guys in the next episode. Ciao.
If this is helpful, give me a like, follow me, or subscribe for more.